the following of modules in Python, I'm also going to mention, for example, imagine that you want to have this kind of class imported, but you want to make it very much shorter, change the name. You can write import kinds of variables as, for example, KOV actually. So KOV will work the same as kinds of variables in a very much shorter way. So for example, here, instead of writing kinds of variables, which is not defined here because we write import kinds of variables as KOV, we can write KOV, and here we can run it very much simpler. As you can see, it's very much shorter than the way it was. You can also copy it here, cov.a, print it. Also, let me comment the other printed out variables. Let's save this and run the code. As you can see, we can see 7 and 5. Also, let me comment class so that we don't have it again. So as you can see, we can see the same variable, the same result as we had before, here with the shorter kinds of variables name. Also, for example, imagine that you want to access a certain item inside of the class. So here, for example, import kinds of variables as KOV, and imagine that, so for example, imagine that in the class variable you want to access only one of the items or one of the variables inside of that module. So here I can write from class import C1. So here we have C1, we have imported C1, and we don't need to write class anymore. So for example, you're going to use C1 a lot and you don't want to even write class. So you can simply write C1 and use it a lot of times. So for example, you only want C1 from the class and you don't want anything, or you want to have access to any of the objects or items or variables or functions inside of the class, but you only want C1 object. So you can write it this way, and using this kind of writing, you don't need to write class.c1, you can simply access C1. So let's see what happens here. As you can see, it shows the same result. There is no error, and our script is totally clear, and there are no errors in our code. And for example, even if you don't want to write KOV here, you can also do it for kinds of variables. So here I can write from kinds of variables import A, and then I can write print A. So as simple as that, I can C7 here and see how easy that happens. You can only print A, and because we have imported A from the kinds of variables, we do not need to write kinds of variables or even write it this way, so that we can write cov.a. So this is how we can make things simpler inside of the modules, or when we want to import modules. We can this is actually very useful when you have a lot of functions inside, for example, this module, and you want to use it a lot of times inside of this other code that you want to write. You can simply import those functions So for example, you have a lot of functions inside of the class. You can write import c1, comma c2, command function 2, function 3, function 4, and so on. And this way you're gonna make your writings a lot more simpler.